I think one word that probably could best describe them is uncontainable.
He is the Yoda of certainly prostate cancer research, definitely of urological research the last 40 years.
Rather than teaching you facts, he tries to bring out one's internal creativity.
I don't remember the exact date in which I met Don Coffey, but I vividly remember the experience. We had gone to this little burger shop that was downstairs, and just afterwards, we went out into the street, and he'd gotten a whole bunch of ketchup and mustard little packages and lined them up in a particular pattern on the curb next to a whole bunch of paper plates. He backed his car up, drove it down at what seemed like 70 miles per hour, and it was like almost 1 in the morning, ran over all the ketchups and mustard, they splattered all over the plates, and then he screeched to a halt, jumped out of the car, and said, "This is what I was talking about, something about the pattern of the splat." I said, "Sign me up, I want to do this."
The first time I met Dr. Coffey, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was a medical student. About the third week of medical school, this short, rotund gentleman that looked like Benjamin Franklin walked into the lecture hall, and it was Dr. Coffey. After 3 sentences had come out of his mouth, it was clear to me that I needed to work with this man.
My full name's Donald Straley Coffey. I was born in 1932. My mother, when I was a little boy, she said, "How did you now start getting into all this trouble?" She said, "Every time you get into trouble, you're driving me one step closer to the graveyard." So I went out to try to figure out how many steps it was to the graveyard, so I didn't push her too far. And when she found out, she cried. She thought I was the most horrible, thoughtless kid in the country, but I didn't want to get her killed. I thought I was doing what was right. I went to work in this service station, and so this service station was open 24 hours a day, 365 days. It was never closed for 20 years, and my father managed that. So I worked there all the time. I did everything you could think of, changing tires, making road trips. It was one of the great experiences of my life.
I met Don Coffey at King College in Bristol, Tennessee. By the end of college year, he had asked me to marry him, and I was almost 19, and he was 21. You know, I had fun with him, and that was the main thing.
Eula's the best thing that ever happened to me.
I've always been amazed at how the chief came to work on cancer. He was practicing his meditation, and all of a sudden, the word cancer came to his mind. He had to go home and look up what cancer meant in the dictionary. How do you explain that? How do you explain a mystical event like that?
There was no fear in our hearts about coming to Hopkins or going into engineering without a degree. But very quickly, I started working my way into various labs. And I did that by volunteering to wash glassware. And so what happened when I saw a notice on the bulletin board one night that says the Johns Hopkins Hospital is looking for someone to work on 17 keto steroids in the urine of hypophysectomized patients. I didn't know what any of those words meant, but it said cancer, and that's why I was here.
One of the greatest things in the history of urology cancer research was Bill Scott putting Don on the faculty at the Brady. Like Jackie Robinson, like an agent of change, really. He just fundamentally believed that if you get to the truth of things in disease, health comes.
I would oftentimes see him going down the hall with a cadre of young people, students and trainees with him, were eager to learn from the master. It's like the shepherd with the flock following.
Don Coffey likes to push the students. He likes to push his graduate students. And he would walk into the room and say, "I'm going to lecture to you for the next hour." And then he brought little firecrackers into the lecture hall and said, "Every time that I'm going to put a question on a test, I'm going to pop one of these firecrackers."
I think you hear a lot of talk in these days about team science. How do we assemble teams of researchers with different expertise who can solve more complex and more urgent problems? I think people who've been influenced by Don Coffey in some way assemble into these teams easily without management, spontaneously and organically.
Now, can you have fun with science? And the answer is yes. We call this the long rifles.
The long rifles meetings, which started out in Dr. Coffey's living room, it goes in directions that you can absolutely never predict. And if it goes along the path that was predicted and prescribed, then it was a failed meeting. I've never been to a failed long rifles meeting because it never goes in any predictable direction.
A lot of long rifles end up thousands of miles away for a while now, or worlds away, continents away. But the connectedness of coming together and really enjoying the adventure or the hunt for a solution to the cancer problem. There are an awful lot of long rifles out there, but there'll only be one chief, and that'd be Don.
What I like to think about is what was said about him in his high school yearbook. It said, talkative and energetic and a sure cure for the blues.
He just has a way of transcending knowledge, a way of telling people and helping them figure out what the holes are in their experiments, what are the sort of best practices for research. But he also has best practices for life. It's just he has spent a lifetime serving, whether it's serving his students, serving his family, serving his church. He is an example to us all.
Dr. Coffey's legacy is clear. It's the people that he's trained. Most of us will leave behind a legacy of our children, some one or two mentees that we train, but Don leaves behind an entire battalion of people. We are a band of brothers.
You get what you think is a true calling, a true purpose in life, and if it's playing the violin, or if it's cooking, or if it's being kind, or whatever it is, you should go do that. But you have one thing helping you. You have the experiences of all the other people on the planet. And the test of that is what has worked and doesn't work. And to me, I can't prove a thing, but I can prove the following. There's more to this than any of us know. And there's more beauty and excitement and things that we're just beginning to figure out. And so what is the love for your spouse? What is the love for your country? What is the love for science and students? I don't know, but when I see it, I know.